guys, here is my reference photo. It's an Instax instant film. I use those pretty often. I love them. They're really good for being able to step back and just look at the big picture of a thing. I'm kind of in the mood today to do a messy paint. So I'm not particularly gonna follow any good guidelines or anything. Probably palette knife mostly. I got all my paint colors. No particular rules. Just make a nice big old mess and mix up a whole bunch of fun paint. I'm rather fond of using yellows. I mean, who isn't? Probably everybody, but that's okay. I don't care. I was kind of in the mood to start off with yellow to kind of do a baseline sketch and maybe leave some of that peeking through to the end. Who knows? We'll see at the end. But sketching sometimes in acrylic is quite nice because if you've not played with acrylic, it's different than oil. It's very easy to do layers on top of layers on top of layers. And I like that. You don't have to commit to something. You can just be super messy. Who cares? You just do another layer on top if you don't like it. It's very nice, relaxing, low expectation kind of art supply. So look at that whole bunch of blue, and we'll mix in a whole bunch of different kinds of yellows. So anybody who has a bit of experience with plein air painting and mixing greens, you know that it's very important to pay close attention to the different kinds of yellows you're using, because if you're going to mix all your greens, the actual yellows you're using in the base are super important to make different shades and tones of green. And I know I'm not the only plein air painter out there. It's one of the things that I really enjoy, trying to kind of put the viewer of the painting into the place you were. So the goal of a plein air painter is to display a very brief time in a very specific place. So I'm trying to make you feel the wind, the smells, the temperature, just the light, the general feeling of being in that space at that time. And most plein air painters, of course, will do on-site, but I can't always go to somewhere on-site. This particular reference photo was actually from a different state. So, I can't very well easily go and do a whole bunch of paintings there. I'm nowhere close to there. So it's a nice way for me to revisit that space, even just for a couple hours. And don't be fooled by these paintings and how quick these videos are, because clearly I've sped up the videos, because a 25-minute video, these paintings probably took closer to probably 2-3 hours. It just depends on which ones and how fast you speed it up and how much detail. And for a mess paint where I'm using mostly a palette knife, I knock these out pretty fast. Way back when, in the good old days, I used to do competitions, plein air competitions. They were so much fun. And I'd take a week off of work and I'd spend the week out in the countryside painting. It's like competition-wise, and you'd compete with a whole bunch of other plein air painters. And most of them were timed, so you'd have anywhere from a day or even like 4 hours, sometimes 2 hours, to go from a blank canvas to a completed framed painting. And on those competitions, I think that is the thing that I learned the most. That is when I learned the quickest and the most about just the basic concepts of art. Is when you're in the time crunch and you just have to get it done. You don't have any other choice, and you're surrounded by all these other wonderful artists who've been doing this for decades. I did this in my early 20s. I'm a bit older now. But I feel like those competitions really, really jump-started me into my love of landscape painting, of kind of half plein air painting, because I like to use reference photos, not to imitate it, not exactly, because I'm not particularly interested in super photorealism. That just, I don't like super photorealism. It doesn't do anything for me. I find that it is, how do I say it delicately? Because I'm not trying to say stuff that is, controversial in any way, but I personally don't like super hyper realism. I just don't. I don't find it very creative. Oh yeah, there is super skillful. You have to have a lot of skill to do it. But I don't, in most cases, I don't find it that creative because you're just imitating a photo. It's pure skill. There is no creativity in it. But I think the creativity is what I like, what I want to see, at least from other people and from myself. I want to see stuff that you can't capture in a photograph. That's what I want to see out of art, something that moves me. And super hyper realism has never moved me in that way. It never has. I've never connected with it in that way. Oh yeah, I've seen lots of impressive examples, but that's all they are. It's not anything more than that for me. This color palette is something that I would have taken with me on one of my plein air trips anyway. I always mix greens. I find anytime you mix a color, I find it so much more interesting if you can mix an in-between color than to take something straight out of the tube. It's just, everything turns out better if you can do that. I don't know why. I don't know the science behind it, but at least to my eyes, the colors become richer and better. Again, my personal opinion, there's a lot of stuff I'm saying today that's going to be very opinion-based, but how can you go through life without opinions? It's just not a thing. And about art, I've spent many, many years doing art, and you develop some opinions about things, and you develop some habits, some art habits, some bad, some good. I got a habit of this palette knife. I love palette knives. I use them quite often. They're definitely something that can be used for more than just mixing on a palette. I think it is so much fun to do a full painting with just palette knives. If you haven't tried it, you should try it once. If you don't have a palette knife, go get one. You can get real cheap, like plastic ones. Of course, these metal ones, like this one, look at the handles, pretty junked up. You can tell I've used it for a long time, and they kind of they get a little junky on the handles because the acrylic paints and the oil paints and everything will eventually dry onto it, even if you try to clean it up like I always do. But it's a good tool. It's a lot of fun for quick paints and messy paints, and it was the main thing I used for competitions, simply because I could knock something out very quickly that looked pretty interesting, very textured. I think it's kind of fun. I hope you can tell in the video I'm not taking myself too seriously. I'm just having a good time putting some paint down and getting paint all over my arms, and if you see my head, I'm so sorry. It'll pop in every once in a while with my dumb little curly head. A little hair tie on the very top. Just trying to keep it out of the way. I've got this bad habit of getting paint all in my hair. And for those curly hair people, it's not the easiest thing to get out. You'll find it a week later. can't remember which painting it came from because you've done, a dozen paintings in between. Who knows which one it's from? And at this point, you're starting to see the path and the hill that goes upward, and that blank spot that's white will be a little bit of sky that's peeking through the brush and the tree trunks, but starting to put out little details of the path. And the nice thing about that palette knife is you can make some nice sharp lines. They can be very precise, but depending on how you load it, you can also make it quite imprecise and textured and interesting. And that imperfection kind of adds to a lot of the interest of a forest painting that might otherwise be kind of boring. I mean, how many paintings or pictures have you seen of just a path through the woods? I've seen dozens, so many. And a lot of them are not really that interesting because it's kind of the same thing over and over again. It's a little path. You might see somebody's feet, might see a little bit of sky peeking through the foliage, and I don't think that's how you say that. Foliage. My English is not so good today. But they all those path paintings they can be kind of boring. So you have to add something. You have to add something to add a little bit of interest. And sometimes it can be blue. You can add a blue to shadow areas that actually add quite a bit of interest in a plein air painting. I don't remember which of the years I used to do the competitions that I figured that out from a different artist, but I thought that was such a interesting aspect of adding something extra to realism that isn't quite realism. And the fun thing about being an artist is you get to edit. You get to edit without software. You get to edit in your head. You get to edit with your mind how you want to make a place look. Because if you remember way back in that reference photo that I showed you very, very briefly, because I don't, the point isn't to focus on the reference pictures. It's just to be something to reference as a loose guideline. And if you look back at that, it don't look anything like this mess paint. This mess paint is turning out much more interesting because that reference photo is just a plain old everyday normal walk through the woods. Now this, with all this texture, this is something a little different. This is something that you can't capture in a photograph. That's what I want. And one tip though, if you want to do plein air painting, my head, stop that, stop it. I gotta get better at keeping my head out of the frame. I'm not good at that at all. But, my tip for plein air painters, keep if you're gonna do acrylic, keep a bottle of heavy-bodied black, like the darkest, deepest black that you can find. Because even though I'm not a big fan of using black straight out of the bottle, if you're doing a quick paint, you might need it. You might need that very super quick dark color just to add stuff real quick, because if you're on a time limit and you are trying to save 15 minutes so that you can finish a painting before the time runs out, that bottle of deep black will be very super helpful to you. And I think it was Liquitex, a heavy-bodied black, is a really good base one to use. It's just a good tool to have as a backup. Now, of course, it's different if you're using oils, but if you're using acrylics, that's my good go-to black, deep, heavy-body acrylic. Just to have around. I rarely mix it with anything. I just usually use it by itself for quick purposes. And I want to say that I am kind of proud of myself for something. I'm trying to work on letting more of the underpainting show. So underpainting is something you would do in oils. It's not something that's really done in acrylics, but for oils you do a very basic rough underpainting in like umber brown or one of the brown. It just depends on the artist what color they're using for the underpainting, but a very a watered down, water is not the right word, turpentine. You mix it up and make it real thin with turpentine. You kind of do a sketch with that, and that becomes your underpainting to try to get all of your shapes and everything where they need to be. But I'm clearly not using oil here. I'm using acrylics. So in acrylics, an underpainting, at least for my purposes, would have been that yellow sketch that I put at the very beginning. If y'all remember the yellow, I'm trying to get myself into a habit of letting more of that show through and peek out all the way to the top of the painting. And that's kind of hard to do because the way I'm doing mess paints like this is because I'm doing layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. Oh, look, more of that black. That's a good one. But it's pretty hard to, at least for me, to let those pieces stay. I don't cover them with more things. I've just gotten myself into a habit of allowing the acrylics with these mess paints to just kind of build up and be super textured. I think they're quite fun, but I want to let the whole gambit be able to show through all the way from that very base bottom all the way to the very darkest layers that I tend to put at the very end. I want you to be able to see parts of all of it. I find it a very interesting part of the process. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who disagree with me, just like with the hyperrealism comments I made. There's always going to be people that disagree with you, and that's okay. That's the fun thing about art. There's not really a right and wrong. It's very conceptual. You get to kind of make your own rules for yourself. I didn't go to art school. I do this because I love to do it. I do it for the love of painting, of the love of itself. And what a very nice reason to do something. I think more people in this world could benefit from doing things just for the love of itself. I think a lot of people just need to take a step back from things and take a moment to not take life so seriously, to, enjoy something that you're doing. Like be present in the moment. And that's one of the things that I love about painting, is that it lets me be very present in the moment of exactly what I'm doing. And oh, look at that. Look at that palette. Such a mess paint. Mess painting is it's a very delightful tactile thing to deal with all this paint, all the piles of things. And I have this really terrible habit of just rubbing extra paint on my arms just to get it out of the way. And I'm sure there's going to be a few people out there who pay attention to how often you'll see those little finger strips of paint on my arms and my hands. And if you could see my body, which you can't, you would see it on a shirt. Sometimes I'll wear an apron. I've got it all over the apron, and it's just paint everywhere. It's part of being present in the moment. And just being able to enjoy something and not have any other motive other than to make something that's something that you enjoy, something something that maybe somebody else might enjoy too. And one of the reasons why I like this whole process of editing videos too is it just adds another level of creating a thing. You know, I make the painting, and then I also get to make the video of making the painting. So I get to double dip. I get to make two things from this one painting. And oh, that's fun. Heck yeah, let's spend more time doing this. Let's make it more complex. Let me be more in the moment for longer. It's just a nice way to spend some time. Yeah, I think a lot of people could benefit from painting a little bit, maybe. You know, you don't have to be good at this, not at all. And you always have to, everybody has to start somewhere. I didn't start off being able to paint like this. Oh no, of course not. I've been doing this for a long time now. It just takes time and being present with the moment. You know, it doesn't have to be good. No. What's important is that you're having a good time. That you're taking a moment to be present. Whoever's listening right now, I want you to try, do an activity today where you can be with yourself and understand your circumstances. Just clear your mind for a minute. Painting for me can be quite meditative. I know it's not for everybody. I know for some people it can actually be kind of stressful. But I think if you practice at it and you lose a lot of those anxieties and those expectations of what the outcome's going to be, you have a much better time. I've got this, I rarely go into a painting knowing what it's going to look like. I don't really plan for that kind of stuff. If you don't have an expectation going in, while you're aware and while you're present, that's when you make the best decisions. It doesn't always work as well if you make a whole bunch of plans before you start making a thing. I think that's part of being a creative person, is that it's just sometimes it's easier to make things up as you go. I think it's your plan is better that way. You have a better outcome and you have a better time. Even if the outcome isn't better, the time is better. That's why I'm doing it. There's your painting. Thanks, guys.